Welcome to our webinar, Legal and Technologies webinar on AI-powered growth for law firms and solo practitioners with Priori, a leading legal marketplace for in-house teams to find outside counsel, and Outhouse Attorneys, a law firm that provides dedicated outside counsel services to businesses and in-house teams. My name's Daniel Lewis. I'm the US CEO of LegalOn, and our software helps over 4,500 legal teams and law firms globally review contracts with AI. Our software helps find and fix contract risks in commercial contracts with industry-leading AI that is paired with expert legal content written by experienced attorneys. So I've been working in legal technology and practical guidance for the last decade plus, first as a co-founder and CEO of legal analytics company Ravel, which we sold to LexisNexis in 2017. And then at LexisNexis, where I led various businesses, including the practical guidance business. I'm really excited today to be in conversation with two experts who are at the front lines of driving legal business growth and innovation. Lyndon Renwick, who's the managing partner at Outhouse and a customer of LegalOn, and David Drew, who manages legal and business affairs at Priori. So I'm going to turn it over to David for him to give a more fulsome introduction of himself, and then Lyndon, and then we'll start to jump into the substance here. So over to you, David.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. Sorry, I just want to make sure my audio is on. My name's David. I work in legal and business affairs at Priori. I started at Priori working on behalf of our talent network. So our marketplace has a network of several thousand independent firms and attorneys. You can find wonderful people but perhaps not necessarily including Lyndon on our marketplace. And I really got to know a lot of providers, what they needed when they were developing business with new clients, and how we could find ways to support them. Now I'm in a hybrid role. So I both am in-house at Priori, working on our commercial contracting, our legal projects, but I'm still providing operational support to marketplace. So still very close to our providers, and sort of close to the coalface, as it were, in terms of those matching interactions and those sort of the start of counsel relationships that we help facilitate.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And Lyndon?
Thanks very much. Good day, everyone. My name is Lyndon Renwick. I am the managing partner of Outhouse Attorneys. I'm ex-Big Law and was an attorney in Australia before becoming an attorney in the US. Most of what we do now is outside counsel services for usually very large organizations, but our core offerings are commercial contract overflow support, legal ops consulting, general counsel as a service, and outside counsel management. But our greatest value offering to most of our clients is turning around a high volume of commercial contracts in a very short time.
Awesome. Thank you guys both. So before we jump in, we have a few poll questions to learn a little bit more about who's with us today. So we're going to pop those up. And while you answer those questions, I wanted to tell a little bit more about what you can expect during the course of this session, especially at the end, where we'll open up the room for about 15 minutes of Q&A. So throughout the webinar, you can ask questions with the Q&A icon at the bottom. And if something is totally on point, right in the flow of conversation, we might even jump in and take that question on the fly. Upvote questions you find interesting, and we'll try our best at the end of the webinar to answer them. So hopefully you've had a few seconds to answer questions describing your practice, how you feel about the use of AI in your practice, and whether you're using AI tools in your day-to-day. So let's see if we have some results for that. All right, so 34% of those on the line are solo practitioners. Another 34% are from small and mid-sized law firms. That's great. This is really going to help us dial in the conversation to speak to your circumstances as best we can. Second question, how do you feel about the use of AI in your legal practice? 60% are enthusiastic, 30% are cautiously optimistic, and 10% are unsure. So that actually matches up really well with other survey results we've been seeing over the past several months. Generally very high levels of excitement, even if it's just cautious or enthusiastic, and some number who are still learning. And that's great. We welcome everybody wherever you are in your journey here. And then lastly, are you using AI tools in your day-to-day? 25% say yes frequently, 50% say yes, but experimenting, 20% say no, but want to start, and 5% say no, skeptical of doing so. So this is a pretty broad question. There's a lot of AI probably baked into a variety of tools that you use. Some people could probably answer this by saying, yes, I use it as part of Gmail. But today we'll talk more specifically about AI in the contracting workflow. So thanks for giving us that orientation to kind of where you're coming from. So let's jump in. Why should solo practitioners and law firms care about AI? What's the business case, Lyndon?
Oh, well, I suppose one thing that I'll mention right out of the gate, and we'll probably repeat throughout, is I keep telling people that AI is not going to take your job, but a person using AI will. And so for my purposes, I don't want that to happen to me. And for the people on this call that aren't using AI, they should probably be worried about people like me. And it's because the value proposition for AI is so in favor of its use. I have been able to scale so much more effectively using AI than I ever was able to with employees. And it's repeatable and cheaper than employees ever were. I don't have any risks with turnover. I don't have any payroll taxes or registering in other states to do business. And the cost of it is a fraction of what I was paying for just one FTE attorney. So there's a lot to be said about it, but when you combine all of those things, the opportunities presented by AI powered contract tools, it's profound.
And David, what do you see from your perspective?
Yeah, I think, from the provider side of our platform, Lyndon's absolutely right. We are seeing increasing adoption, and to the extent that folks are waiting behind, they could get left behind if they don't start to seriously look at these tools. I think on the client side, we're not seeing a lot of explicit demand saying, send me AI-powered attorneys, but we always see explicit demand for send me attorneys who are efficient, can work at scale, can handle fast turnarounds, and are, reliably giving one point of contact. I think that's another really wonderful thing about the scale enablement that Lyndon mentions. A lot of clients say, I don't want to deal with a firm. I don't want to be shuffled around from associate to associate. I want one point of contact. I want to work with Lyndon, not Lyndon and friends. And so I think, to the extent that AI allows more of Lyndon, that's great. That's exactly what clients want.
That's interesting. So maybe turning it over, since there are some folks from in-house teams here as well, why should in-house legal care? Lyndon, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, of course. So my entire platform, Outhouse Attorneys, is a play on outside in-house counsel. So I work with a lot with in-house teams, in-house legal, and in-house sales. There's two main reasons why in-house folks should care about this. The first is that actually a very recent survey by Lexion found that about 40 or 44% of sales team personnel think that in-house legal turns around contracts too slowly, and it prejudices deals getting closed. And the second is that in-house, when I was in-house, I was constantly viewed as a non-revenue producing cost center. And I was constantly needing to prove my value. And AI contract review tools kind of meet both of those needs. It accelerates the ability, the speed with which in-house teams can review these contracts, which makes sales and finance happy. And it also helps to demonstrate the value, because the sales team is not going to be using these tools. And it's really a tool designed to supplement what the attorney can do, not replace what they can do. So it supplements the attorney's value, and it makes all of the stakeholders happy.
And David, so you mentioned, folks aren't necessarily asking for AI-powered attorneys, but they're looking for all of these characteristics that AI-powered kind of outside counsel can demonstrate potentially more effectively by how they use their tools. What about the case for in-house teams using AI tools themselves differently?
Yeah, I think there's extraordinary value in the adaptability that, there's so much focus in the in-house community and the legal operations community about building process. And yeah, if you've got a really good playbook, a well-implemented CLM, and well-defined templates and fallback positions, a team working without AI on their own paper can probably be pretty efficient.
Yeah.
But what do you do in the circumstances where you're on your own paper.
Yeah,
This
for the
is
99% of other companies that don't have those three characteristics.
exactly. And this is a pain point I feel. I am not yet at the point of implementation, but I hope to be within the year where, I love it when Priori's clients are willing to work on our paper and our services agreement template. But when we're not, man, that is a much harder position for me to be in, especially in terms of justifying my value to our sales team. And we all want the deal to close, but it's hard if each thing is a new thing. Hopefully AI can make it could give me more adaptability.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really nice that you're able to bring both of those perspectives, sort of what works in the marketplace and your own experience a priori handling this stuff. It makes it very real. So in the past, I'd say over the last decade, there's been a lot of hype, and it's gone through cycles, but there's generally been a lot of hype around legal tech and AI. And we've seen headlines over the last 10 years saying AI robots are coming to take your jobs. None of that has proven to be the case, right? Lawyers are still doing quite well. But what about legal AI right now is different? Is it different? Is this moment different? Lyndon, what's your take?
It is different, and I'm happy to have anyone reach out to me on LinkedIn who wants to suggest otherwise, who's watching. But the reason I think it's different is I truly think that some of these products, not a lot of them, but some of them have genuinely reached that minimally viable product maturity, and we're now beyond MVP, and we're about to step into the beginning of the adoption cycle. That's going to take on various firms. There'll be consolidation in the providers. There'll be different levels of adoption throughout the industry. But there is going to be this huge ramp up period where this becomes like using Microsoft Word and track changes. This is going to be one of the cornerstones of contract review, because just doing it manually isn't going to be up to snuff anymore once customers and clients realize the speed and efficiency with which this can be done. Candidly, there's going to be those who learn how to use this technology, and those will be left behind. That's not hyperbole. That's the reality that we're walking into. And candidly, it's the reality that I'm going to help create, because again, that value proposition for clients and being able to do this effectively and efficiently and cheaply is going to demand change in how the work is done.
And David, what would you add to that?
I think the big difference this time, which I'm sure that's written on many tombstones across the world, it was different this time. But this is the first tech cycle of my lifetime where I think it started with a consumer boom that I can think of, right? Like the typical course of adoption for things is you have very niche use cases or very like hobbyist communities who build something, and then over time it gets to widespread adoption. With ChatGPT, we kind of ripped the lid off the can, and AI was sprung upon us like one of those joke cans with a snake popping out. So I think it's the hard question for a lawyer to answer is like, why aren't you? Because so many people, so many clients, so many people that they meet at cocktail parties or wherever, like, oh, AI is a thing now. It's a thing. We can all use it. We all use it. So I think that kind of immediate adoption on the consumer side almost certainly is spurring the pressure to say, all right, we know this is usable in some cases, make it work in your case.
Yeah. Yeah, I liken it to, I think of sort of AI in the contracting space on a 5-point scale of autonomy, right? It started with, can you identify what kind of contract this is? Can you identify whether there's a governing law clause? That's step one. That's now been proven out and has existed for a number of years. Step two was, can you be a little bit smarter about what's actually within that contract? Can you notice that the governing law is Delaware or California? And that's also been proven out. That technology has existed. But where we are today feels like kind of level 3 in this 5-point spectrum, where you can now actually get material help drafting, reviewing. It can't do it all. And that's what you're talking about, Lyndon. It's still, there's an attorney in the driver's seat guiding this, making business calls, but it's really crossed a threshold where you can start to see substantial improvements in your speed of review, speed of drafting. And then the next two stages of, level 4 might be the case where you can use AI to more completely review certain contracts under certain circumstances. Maybe NDAs of kind of a very known quantity are the first place where we'll see that. And level 5, I don't think we can quite see it on the horizon yet, but that would be essentially saying, hey, this is a fully self-driving car, right? You can throw any contract at it, any circumstances, and it's going to do a review. That's really not where we're talking about today. I think we're kind of at level 3, but I think the next 10 years, we're going to see so much more change than we did over the last 10 years. So like you said, Lyndon, I think we're at the start of an adoption curve that's going to be very, very, very exciting and very transformational.
If I can in the back
yeah.
of that, there's two things that probably weren't mentioned. One is that I'm more than 10 years into my career at this stage, and in those earlier iterations of AI tools, there wasn't a lot of value for me. I don't need issue flagging because I can do that myself. Whether or not I have a playbook, I can massage language in, etc. But for a second or third year associate, some of these tools and the red flag guidance is fantastic because it can improve the quality of what they can do with less supervision. That's not great for me as a solo because I don't need that improved output from juniors. But what got me interested is where it could finally allow me to do my work faster. So, even a client that does have a playbook and they have their fallbacks, even though I've got that memorized, I still have to jump in and take the time to type it in. I have to jump in and put in the canned response in the comments to help justify the position. But the level that we're at now, it allows me to do those pieces faster. So I don't have to sit back and go, spend the 30 or 60 seconds having to type in and massage the language. Now the AI revise buttons can allow me to hit a button and it'll do a first pass revision for me. And I can just tweak and adjust and do a genuine review of red lines instead of having to do it from scratch. I don't have to type out the canned response because now there's a repository in these tools that allow me to pull it and drag it in. So even though it's only saving me 60 seconds here, 90 seconds there, at scale, those things add up to hours per week. And that's what was the draw for me at the current level.
Yeah, no, that's great. And sort of talking about those low-hanging use cases, what do you see, David? What are you hearing from attorneys and in-house teams?
Yeah, I think certainly there's increasing comfort to do this sort of first-line contract review. I think what we talked about at the beginning when we were running the poll, where some people might say, well, yeah, of course I use AI. It's baked into Gmail. I think that's another thing that is helping move this adoption cycle along, where, I'm a former litigator. When I was doing research in LexisNexis, it wasn't yet branded Lexis AI, but it was augmenting my capacity in a way that feels very familiar to users of modern AI tools. So I think the more that people get comfortable with AI as, I guess, more of a use case neutral tool set or something, a concept that can be applied in a lot of different media and different venues, and it's only going to get better. I'm an optimist.
Yeah, that's great. So actually, let's open up another poll question here, which is, what AI use cases do you and our audience find most exciting for your practice? Either because you're sort of touching and working with them today, or you're excited about the possibilities of getting help in these particular use cases. One of the things that I think is so interesting about this latest technology is how flexible it is, and the ability to sort of serve a wide variety of use cases. So having given you guys a few seconds to answer that poll question, let's see if we have some results. Let's see, do we have results yet? There we go. Okay, so 56% say contract review and redlining, 63% say document summarization, 59% contract generation, 53% legal research. Yeah, this is exciting. So let's jump into that. One of the use cases that we're seeing in this poll, and that on this call we've spent a lot of time looking at it, talking about, is contract review and redlining. And that's something that we focus on at Legal On. So Lyndon, could you talk a bit about how you're using that in your practice and how you're seeing firms use AI? Maybe that's a question more for David, but let's talk about that use case in particular, contract review and redlining.
Yeah, sure. So I will say that I originally tried scaling up my practice with employees and 1099 contractors. Again, we specialize in high volumes of contracts and short turnaround times. And so I needed bodies to be able to do this at scale. Can never reliably scale up because one, people leave and then you get trapped in this hiring and retraining process. And there's also knowledge gaps. I ended up having to hire only people with over 10 years of commercial experience because you need to cover IP and commercial contracts, SaaS, data privacy, real estate, drones, aviation, blockchain, payment processing, government. It's a wide gamut. And that was really difficult because the people who have that breadth of experience are typically working for themselves or are very expensive. So I decided I was going to try to scale using AI instead of employees because AI can do a lot of those things without the drawbacks. I don't have to pay to payroll taxes or state registrations. I don't have these 5-figure payrolls every single month. I don't have to train, retrain, or worry about turnover. But what I do have with these tools is I have a first pass contract review process. I've built my models, I've put my canned responses into things. And when I upload the contract, I can either say compared to this existing template, which is, my client's template, or I can do it against a preset playbook. And then bam, within about, less than a minute, I have, for all intents and purposes, a junior associate's review of the contract. And I can say, these flags are immaterial, move them on. And now let's get to redlining the things that really need redlining. Now, I mentioned before, I don't then need to spend every single time typing everything because AI can click a button and give me that first pass new version of the clause. So now instead of me doing the work nonstop, I am reviewing the work and correcting it so that it reflects, work product that represents my standard and my client's expectations. And as I kind of mentioned previously, the speed with which you can manage to do the work is incredible. 60 seconds here, 90 seconds there adds up to eliminate hours every single day. And the result is my operating costs have plummeted because I'm not carrying, all the overhead that goes with payroll. My clients are much happier because they're getting contracts much faster, and their bills are lower because I bill on the billable hour, and I'm not spending as much time. So first pass contract review is the primary use for how we're doing it right now, but I expect to continue to investigate ways to scale with this technology.
Yeah, super interesting. David, what are you hearing?
Yeah, Lyndon's definitely not alone in terms of the attorneys that I've met with through our network who are using AI to scale up their practices. I think from the client side, again, not seeing that explicit demand, but we're seeing a lot of things where, clients are fundamentally looking for people to handle volume based on existing process. And you can imagine that we're just 1 degree of separation away from saying, we get, for instance, requests coming in saying, hey, we're implementing a CLM, we need an attorney to go through and help with building our repository. So going through coding old agreements so that we can analyze what's in there and make use of it going forward. The logical next step in that chain is so that way we can then, make this playbook more automated and have the attorneys use it in this hyper fast, hyper efficient way going forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would just add what we see from our customer base at LegalOn is a few things. One, we run broad-based surveys every year, and those survey findings reflect what customers tell us about how they use it. And so we hear from that work, on average, people experience about a 40% time savings from this usage of AI as kind of a first pass review to help flag issues, fix issues. And then 90% plus report quality improvements, feeling like it provides an extra set of eyes to spot issues that they otherwise might not have spotted. And I think it does, it sort of fits what you guys are both talking about, which is for teams that don't have full playbooks or teams that have playbooks for some contracts but not for others. There's so many opportunities to fill in the gaps there to help spot issues that may have only been tribal knowledge or you don't have a complete checklist for, and to provide language and off-the-shelf guidance and advice that can help fix issues once you encounter them in something that might be less familiar. So what are you guys seeing in terms of tangible benefits from these? So Lyndon, you mentioned kind of faster deal times, happier clients, deal velocity. Anything else that you wanted to touch on there? What has it meant for your kind of like personal work life as well?
Yeah, so a couple of things worth mentioning. One is that I mentioned that I had to get very experienced and very talented attorneys on my team to be able to cover the breadth of issues that our practice covers. Even then, sometimes when I was reviewing their work product, they missed things, and it was because there was just knowledge gaps in their experience. No fault of their own. It's just they hadn't encountered that area of law in the past. But when you again approach that at scale, I end up spending far more time reviewing the product that I wanted to. And at the point where it takes me as long to review someone's work as it would to do it myself, then the value proposition ends up upside down. The AI tools, at least as I've used them and trained them, it does not miss. And that's where the huge value, tangible benefit is. It doesn't matter if it's a commercial real estate agreement or if it's a SaaS agreement or a DPA, it doesn't miss the issues because it's been pre-trained to flag them. So huge time saver and just a source of comfort knowing that I don't have to go through everything with a degree of intensity to make sure that nothing has been missed. The other tangible benefit, I've increased my rates. So I mentioned that we've got incredible time savings and therefore we're billing our clients less. You would think, well, if you're doing the billable hour, does this upset the commercial model for a firm? But the truth of the matter is because we are turning around agreements faster, clients are happier to pay more for faster deal times and good work product. And as a result of that, we can do more work in less time for more money. And it's kind of a win-win-win proposition for everyone involved. Last point is faster deal times or deal velocity is the language of the contract lifecycle. And I say win-win-win because it's a win for me because I have more work with a higher rate. It's a win for the client because they're paying less per contract and getting faster deals. It's a win for the other side because when they get a contract back faster, they see a deal or parties that are engaged. And when they see, a more engaged counterparty, they are more engaged. So they're more hospitable in the process. They're more accommodating with making compromises because they want to get this, maintain the momentum and get the deal done. So again, I could go on for about an hour on my own about the benefits, but I'll stop talking now because I'm sure people are sick of the sound of my voice. I am.
You have
David,
such a lovely accent, though. Can't be mad at the sound of your voice.
And we're going to return to that economics piece because I want to go into more depth about it because what you're describing is super interesting and an important point of it's not just reducing time spent. You're finding ways to create value through speed. But before we get there, just to sort of finish this thought, David, what are you seeing from sort of tangible benefits, or what are you hearing from folks in the community?
Yeah, I think Lyndon's last point about speed being a value for everyone, including the counterparty, is so huge. As from personal experience, there's nothing more frustrating than having a contract come my way and seeing that the last dated comments on it are like March 2023, and it's like, wow, we're really taking this long. It's hard not to think less of your counterparty, even if there's a wonderful reason why it's taken so long. It's harder to take their concerns as seriously when they've been lingering for a year. Yeah, I think time kills all deals. To the extent that this can help more deals get done, that just can't be understated. That is such a huge value.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get right into that. So we've got some questions from the audience as well. Efficiency is great, but faster may equal cheaper. Are these AI tools going to force a transition to flat fee pricing? Another question sort of puts it in a different way, saying this is not just about flat fee, but subscription or flat fee value-based pricing will be a more profitable way to make money in this new AI paradigm. So Lyndon, maybe go into more depth. Take us through sort of step by step how you've gone about kind of changing the economics of your business based on this.
Yeah, and I appreciate whoever submitted that question because it kind of covers the commercial journey that Outhouse experienced. We started as, started as a subscription-based practice where it was you can have X number of hours per month for Y dollars each month, give or take some overage, and then an overage rate of Z. The commercial model didn't really work because there was either too little work or too much work on any given month, and someone was a loser. So we at some stage experimented with fixed price per contract, and the same problem occurred. For the contracts that didn't require much work, the client was paying too much. And for the ones that just went on for weeks, or you're up to version 8, version 9, call number 6, the value proposition for us was inside out, because you're just hemorrhaging on the price to time ratio. So we ended up coming back to the billable hour. And I had originally thought that clients would express consternation about that, or would see it as a necessary evil. But if you're genuinely fair with the amount of time that it takes and you act with promptness, I haven't seen a call for fixed firm pricing or prescription pricing. It's just been if clients receive a fair bill, they'll pay it. And I kid you not, this is on the Outhouse website because it's absolute truth. I have never had an invoice dispute with any client ever, and I have never written off a single cent of billable time. So let that be a testament to, if you work quickly and you bill your clients fairly, I don't think they have any concerns about the billable hour.
And so talk about how you ended up increasing rates as well, based on the speed of turnarounds. Go into more depth about that.
Yeah, so I spent much of last year experimenting with different AI tools and RFPing, and really digging into what would be the best fit and the best use case. And when I got to the end of it and realized that I was saving about at least 25%, as much as 40% of time in using these tools, I realized, well, I'm going to be losing money because I can do these jobs a lot faster. And so I said, well, I can either increase my rates to make up the difference, or I can just do less work and have more work-life balance. I chose the former just because it's where I am in life. And when clients inquired as to why we're increasing the rates, I was totally honest with them. I told them that I was planning on using this technology with their consent. I told them, what the terms were that we'd negotiated, that their data was confidential and that wasn't used for training purposes, etc. And candidly, this was the direction the firm was heading. And if they didn't have the volumes, or if they didn't have the revenue, resources, or budget for it, completely respect that. Happy to transition with them to bring the work back in-house or to another provider, but this is the direction we were heading in. Didn't lose a single client. Actually, we had more demand at the beginning of January because word got around that Outhouse is doing deals hella fast. And so the customer and the price point that we have identified just aligns rather nicely. That may not be the journey for everyone. I should also mention that most of our clients are Fortune 100 companies. They have the budget, but it's been a very organic and open conversation. And when I have it with clients, they're less interested in talking about the fee because they accept that and move on. And they're more interested to hear what tools we're using and how it works. They're more interested about AI than they are caring about their budget being affected for the new year.
Yeah, it's really exciting. David, what are you seeing from across the Priori community?
Yeah, I think, again, I tend to agree with Lyndon. I think his point about the additional value he's unlocking despite the increased hourly rate is so true. It's striking to me because something that we saw in part of our product has a reverse auction feature where clients state their budget. Attorneys can say, well, I'll do the work for this point in the budget. A historical argument that I used to hear from attorneys with higher rates is they'd say, well, my rate's a little more expensive, but I'm so experienced, I'm so good, trust me, you're going to realize this efficiency. I think, again, we're early, but AI puts a much sharper point on that argument where, yeah, every attorney is going to say, well, I'm more efficient, trust me, I'm wonderful, which really only works when you have an existing relationship. If you can specifically say, I am faster because of these tools that I'm leveraging, I think that really changes the believability and the credibility of that argument. At the same time, look, we do see a lot of demand from clients for stability and predictability in pricing. I think that is the main critique of hourly bills. Is it's not so much that it's annoying to review the bills or nobody wants to look at hours. Like, Nobody does, but there are tools for it. Most big companies have those tools. But the worst experience for a client is when things have been going along. It's maybe month 2 of the engagement. They get a bill and they go, "Whoa, this took way more time than I thought it should take." And then you're starting in this really uncomfortable position where it's not even really about the rate. That's a once a year conversation, maybe. It's about how much time the stuff took. So again, I'm reminded of in the video game Warcraft 3, when you click on one of the characters, it goes, "Time is money, friend. Time is money, friends." Like this, this really it's true.
And so rolling from that, I mean, do you see differences in the economic model for AI between small law and large law? David?
Yeah. I think the big difference is, large firms are incentivized to look at AI as a cost reduction tool. Like Lyndon was saying earlier, we want to make our junior associates more efficient so that we can realize more of their time, so that we can hire fewer of them. There have been pretty credible stories on Reddit and Blind and other places about AmLaw 100 firms having stealth layoffs within the past week. For small firms, though, it's a force multiplier, right? It's not, I need to, it is about cost reduction, but it's about being able to do more with less, not about being able to do more with the amount you already have.
And Lyndon, what do you think? What do you see as kind of the differences in the economic model or maybe even the business behaviors between small law and large law?
So I will say for large law firms, many of them just get by on their name. And that's, they have wonderful reputations and incredible portfolios and experience. But because of that, some will look to them just because they are that firm. Most small firms don't have that luxury. And so they have to sell their clients and say, I have this experience, I have this value proposition. I think that one of the things that AI will introduce is 2 camps or 3 camps. One camp will say, well, I use AI. Another camp will say, well, I'm experienced. And then you'll have a third camp that says, well, I use AI and I'm experienced. So I have the efficiencies and I also have the wherewithal to make sure there's a human in the process. And I think that third piece is how small firms are going to use or sell themselves. And that'll be a differentiator moving forward. I liken it to how, the internet was a great revealer of success. And it was not the internet itself, but it was how you used it. Did you use the internet to teach yourself about how to invest in risks and stocks and bonds and equity, or did you watch cat videos? One of them is going to be a clear winner, and I think it's going to be the same thing with small firms. It's going to be how you use the AI that will differentiate you. Whereas large firms, yes, they'll use it to reduce costs, but I think they'll continue to skate by on the value of their name.
Yeah, makes sense. We're getting a few more questions in, which are all really good ones. So I'm gonna work us through those in various ways as we start to get towards the formal Q&A session. One other kind of last question on the economics piece. So we talked about pros and cons and interest and not interest in subscriptions and flat fees in billable hours. Maybe just at a high level, how do you go about fairly pricing the value of your service, Lyndon? And David, what do you see? Well, start with Lyndon. No, David.
So mine was a pretty organic journey. I started Outhouse on the proposition that most clients hated 3 things about attorneys. They overcomplicated things, they were too slow and too expensive. So I tried to solve all of those things. And I undercut the market by making myself about 25% or as much as 10% of the cost of comparable resources, just to get a rolling client base and get my name out there. Now it's more priced based on, there's 2. One is it's compared to what other folks are doing with small firms in the market. And the other is, even though I'm scaling with AI, I still have a finite amount of capacity. And the firms, the clients that say, yes, I will accept this rate, will stay on. And the firms that say that's too much will fall away. And it'll continue growing that way until everyone says enough. And then that's probably what my new rate will be. But candidly, it's just a matter of going, well, the only way I'd do this work is if it was with this rate. And if they say yes, well, then that's the new rate.
Yeah.
And David, what's the formula for success in the marketplace, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think being savvy about where you sit matters quite a bit. I do think that, again, AI is opening an opportunity to much more fairly price AFAs and flat fee work. So, I think a lot of flat fee work previously, it was driven by either the client running like a formal RFP or reverse auction and really just kind of squishing everyone down to the level that they were most comfortable at, which fair, that's the market. Or it was driven by the provider, kind of sticking a finger in the wind and saying, yeah, I think it's going to take this many hours to get this done. And so I'll take from the hourly benchmark I have in my head, multiply those hours. That's the flat fee you'll pay. The really cool thing about these AI drafting and review tools is over time, the provider will be able to say with much more confidence, honestly, I know how much time it takes. This isn't me sticking a finger in the wind. This isn't just me pulling a number out of my pocket. This is about, I have the data to back it up, and I've demonstrated this time and time again based on the tools that I have. So I think the cool thing is, yes, I think there could be more pressure for AFAs, but it's also going to be a lot easier to fairly price those as this technology gets implemented.
Yeah. So Florian asked a question saying it takes time and experience and skill to set up a firm to use AI for contract review efficiently. Lyndon, could you give an estimate of how much time and resource you invested to reach the point where you are now? And so
Sure.
I sort of segue onto that. You're a legal on customer. Kind of tell us about your journey evaluating different technologies along the way. Give us that full spectrum to answer Florian's question.
Sure. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I actually helped a startup build from scratch an AI powered contract tool. So I had a lot of background knowledge about the techniques and how it works behind the scenes, and also some of the risks. Like I'd already spoken to large outside counsel about various risks, such as the unauthorized practice of law, et cetera. So was very familiar with the risk concerns and what to mention to my practice provider and what to look out for and how this should be rolled out efficiently. So that was already an assumed knowledge. So I'll square that away. I won't include that. But actually get the tool to where it is today. One of the reasons why I proceeded with Legal On after candidly a 6 to 12 month RFP process is because Legal On has out of the box models with a good variety of contracts, whether it's MSAs or SaaS agreements, DPAs, tenant leases, et cetera, and from both perspectives. So the out-of-the-box solutions means that a lot of these things are ready to go pretty quickly, and the level of effort involved to customize it for my purposes was supplementing some of the issue guidance with having my canned responses. So you're talking probably 15, 20 hours to do that across multiple playbooks for different contract types. I candidly, to get to this place and being comfortable to proceed with Legal On was more than a 6-month process. I actually started experimenting with another contract review tool and was working with them for 2 years, and they are a very good contract review tool, but it required me to personally or manually set up and create the playbooks in the back end. And I spent, I will say, 3 months every single weeknight, about an hour or two every day, working on building this playbook. And I got to a point where I said, I can't do this sustainably, and I certainly can't do this at scale. So some tools really do have a time-intensive effort to stand it up. But one of the benefits of Legal On, and this is not a plug, is that it has out-of-the-box solutions.
Yeah, and I don't envy buyers right now. There are a lot of choices. There are a lot of options. There's a lot of marketing to try to work your way through. David, what advice would you have for folks who are looking at new technology, thinking about how to evaluate it?
Yeah, I mean, first talk to Lyndon, but he probably is too busy to field all of everyone's questions. But no, talk around your trusted networks, learn what other providers have learned. Certainly that's going to be faster than everyone starting from square one each time. And I think look for ways to try different points along the spectrum and know yourself, right? Like I recently was at a dinner where a friend was telling me about how he set up a very secure private network through his home that allows him to store all of his media, and he can access it through his phone through a virtual tunnel. And I was like, man, this is super cool. I'm never going to do this. I might do half of it. I might take a part of it that really works for me, but I'm not going to go. I just don't have the sort of hobbyist's intuition or inclination that he had. And I think, if attorneys can honestly ask themselves the question of how much appetite do I have for customization versus out of the box tools, they can then test different points along that spectrum and see where they land.
Yeah, that's a very good point too, and it sort of piggybacks off of Lyndon's, which is this one axis of evaluation is considering how off the shelf is a tool and how much training and investment does the individual user need to contribute. We have a question here from Matthew about charging and kind of pricing models, and I think that's another axis for consideration. Some tools charge based on the volumes of contracts that you review. Others charge based on users or things like that. Legal On in particular, we charge based on users and functionalities within the product. But you want to consider those different elements too as you align them with the economics of your pricing model. So we have another question in here, which leads into a good section around the ethics of using AI. Are there ethical considerations to take into account? Does malpractice kind of float in the ether here as a concern, or how do you navigate that? Lyndon?
So a couple of loaded question here, specifically on the malpractice insurance piece. So I've let my insurer know that we're using this tool. Some of their inquiries, wanted a copy of the service agreement or some of the terms around data security and confidentiality. Others were they wanted assurances about there still being a human in the loop. California has recently issued some model rules for attorneys with respect to the use of AI. That includes, you can't charge for time saved. I will say that we were very intentional about how we rolled this out. So we were very careful when we assessed our various options to find out how the tool worked, what was the confidentiality terms and security, how would our data be used, controls about the instance and export capabilities. We wanted to make sure that our client's data, and specifically privileged information, was not going to be used for any purpose other than for us to use the tool to serve that client. The other piece is that we do not use our tools for any client unless they are aware of it and they've consented to it. It's not, I don't know that that's required. It may be required under the new California model rule, but just as one of the pillars that our house stands on is honesty and transparency. So if we're going to be changing how we do the work or sharing information with a third party, that's absolutely something that we feel our clients should be aware of, and they should have to sign on for before we introduce their stuff to that new environment. So we got the clients to consent in writing. We let them scrutinize us and how the data will be used and gave them assurances there. And we also communicated the same to our malpractice insurer and tried to tick all the boxes.
Yeah, that's great. David, what do you see as kind of best practices along those lines in terms of building trust with clients from within the marketplace around AI usage?
Yeah, I think Lyndon's point about informed consent really hits it on the head. People want to know, even if they don't particularly care in the end, let them know, right? If you have nothing to hide, why hide it? Obviously, I think for practitioners, I do always recommend that, look, this is an evolving field. I'm sure that California is not the only state that is going to introduce a model rule, and I'm sure that we've got 50 states, we might get 50 different variations. We know that even when the ABA weighs in on something, that doesn't necessarily mean that every state is going to agree to follow. And so, look, stay abreast of all the different ways that you might have to demonstrate tick box compliance, but you know how to build trust with your clients, right? Give them information, make sure they understand why you're giving them the information and that they consent to it. And then you can really, I will say clients sometimes have unique concerns. There are some clients who, when I negotiate agreements, data is like kind of an afterthought, just because, hey, they're not giving us that much, and why are we going to like engineer some massive structure on top of it? For others, it's critical, and understandably so. And so you can tailor your approach based on what your client actually needs to know and what they care about.
Yeah, I'd also add that the use of AI is not, it would be sort of a misunderstanding to say it applies in similar ways across all the different aspects of legal practice, right? And so in contract review, what we've been talking about today and sort of where the technology is on its evolution is you still need an attorney in the driver's seat. It can do first pass or it can do last pass, but you want an attorney who's there making decisions, making business judgments, providing oversight of that. And I think on the one hand, if you hear tools saying this is fully automated and it's going to save you 99% of your time, that's not realistic. That's not kind of where the technology stands today, where attorneys can be so hands-off. So coming in with the right set of expectations about the role of the user in interacting with these tools is important. But I also think there's differences between things like reviewing contracts, drafting new documents from scratch, and doing legal research where you're looking for case citations. By now, everybody's heard about the problems of using, say, something like GPT to do case law research. It will make up case law citations. You do not want to use an off-the-shelf, product for consumers to do case law research. Similarly, if you're drafting contracts from scratch or drafting documents from scratch, you need to have a pretty good sense of what the right answer should look like. You need to be cautious about knowing what the right language is, what the legal standards are. So I think you need to be thoughtful about differentiating, is the type of task you're doing, is there a clear black and white right answer that you need to make sure is accurate? Or is there sort of more subjectivity allowed in what good or right can look like? Because how you use generative tools, you need to have those thoughts in mind as you evaluate the outputs of generative tools. Let's see. So there's another question in here from Naveed asking, how do you handle privacy on commercial AI platforms? And have you experienced problems with things like hallucinations, Lyndon?
So one is that, as I do with my own clients' agreements, I went through the terms of service and the agreements with the different options, and I made sure to find out how the data is being used. And if I didn't like what I saw, I redlined those terms. And if it was non-negotiable, then I just wouldn't proceed with that tool. Because before I would consider any scaling opportunity or work accelerator, my client's confidentiality, my client's interests are paramount. That's part of my fiduciary obligations. So I customized the privacy terms in my agreements with various providers to make sure that they aligned not just with my expectations of applicable law, but also aligned with my fiduciary obligations with the clients.
That makes sense.
And as for hallucinations, no, I haven't had any issues. Actually, one thing I was really impressed about with Legal On, as a quick anecdote, is as you'll know, with various agreements, it could be going to refer to the customer as the purchaser or the client or the buyer or the customer. Legal On is very good at picking up on that. So even when you hit AI revise, it will scan and find out how the parties are being referred to, and then when it generates its red lines, it conforms to these existing definitions in the agreement. That was a huge value add, because some of the tools that I've worked with previously, it just plugs in its stock standard thing and it starts adding defined terms that are capitalized that aren't in the agreement. Haven't had that problem with Legal On.
Yeah, that's an interesting note. So there's hallucinations like adding, making up cases entirely. And then in the contract setting, there's hallucinations like making up a new defined term that all of a sudden is sort of adding noise and errors to a contract. I think what we've found from a development perspective is, obviously we're very excited about generative AI, but there are significant steps that we need to take to make it more professional grade, to make it useful for lawyers in a way that is more trustworthy, more accurate. So I'd also recommend that to folks in thinking about evaluating technology. It's great to get your hands dirty and to try out from a personal perspective something like ChatGPT, but don't take that as the final version of what you could be using in a professional context. Both in terms of like what's possible and in terms of you should definitely be looking for more commercial grade tools that raise the bar on top of those consumer level applications. because in areas like security and privacy and data handling, you're going to be able to get different levels from commercial grade products. David, what would you add to any of that? Like, how do you think about navigating these risks and using AI, or navigating the questions around AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't have too much to add in terms of the sort of, I guess, compliance piece or diligence piece. I do think it's important to remember that there's a risk in not pursuing this, right? Like, as Lyndon said up top, AI won't replace you. Attorneys using AI will. I think we see all the time on Priori Marketplace attorneys who really want to rest on their laurels and say, well, I don't need a tool because I am the tool, perhaps in more ways than one. They have a great degree and they're very efficient and powerful. And they might not realize, well, hey, that's, even the top law schools in the world, they aren't just graduating one lawyer a year. They're graduating a couple dozen at least. And there are new ones every year. So, it's very easy to say, well, I'm going to sit back and wait and see how this shakes out. And maybe there's some value in that, in terms of waiting for there to be less noise in the market and clearer signal. But I think you can't really say, well, I'm going to sit back and just pay no attention to this world, not learn about it, not consider how I could implement it, because that is very much how, as Lyndon said, if you took that attitude when the internet was becoming commercially available and an important tool, good luck to you. You're probably not still in business.
Yeah. With sort of new technologies as they emerge, there's a period of multiple years where there's sorts of lots of land grabbing, lots of economic opportunity being created before everybody has figured out how to take advantage of this. So I think we are in the start of one of those moments in a lot of different ways. We're going to put up one last poll question, which is around what topics would folks be interested in learning more about in using AI in your legal practice, to give us some guidance and maybe future topics that we could offer. And while we do that, I'd put out a last call. If you have any remaining questions, please feel free to type them into the chat and we can take them. Otherwise, please answer that question. And while we do that, I'd ask Lyndon and David, what final advice do you have for attorneys thinking about integrating AI into their practice? Lyndon?
So a couple things here. First, do your due diligence. And that takes on a couple of forms. Really narrow down what use case you're looking to solve, or what problem you're looking to solve, because there's a lot of tools on the market, and each one kind of does one thing very well. And you don't want to just try to solve all problems with one tool. I don't think the market is there yet. The second about that, do your due diligence. Find out how the tool works and how they're using your data. And for the love of all that is good and holy, if you ask for a demo, do not let them demo an NDA. NDAs are too formulaic, and so it's so easy to train how to respond to an NDA, and it can look very fancy, but it's all for show. Make them demo an MSA or a SaaS agreement or something that has more variation in its expression, because it's far harder to create reliable models on variable data. And the last one that's as important as the due diligence: commit to using it. I promise you that when you first start to use these tools, you'll sit there and go, I can do this faster manually. And that will be true in the beginning, but it's kind of like a muscle. You have to keep using it, because if you get comfortable with the tool that you select, you will end up being faster than doing it manually.
Yeah, that's a great point. There is a learning curve for anything new, anytime you're changing your processes. And I think committing to doing that learning and giving it some time before you get over the hump is an important kind of mindset to have as you try out these new tools. David, what would be your sort of closing thoughts and final advice for folks?
I would say think about how AI could help you be more human in your practice, right? Like, I think the wonderful potential of this movement and this moment is that, no lawyer wants to spend their time doing the incredibly rote technical work that is sometimes required. So think about, if you can get rid of that, what else can you add? What other value can you add to your clients? Can you be faster, like Lyndon? Can you be more considerate, more thoughtful? I think when you approach the problem from that angle, it's even more exciting. And I think that can lead to those deeper, better relationships with clients that all lawyers need.
I love that. That's a really counterintuitive but graceful place to end. How can AI make you more human? I love that. Thank you guys both for your thoughts. I thought this was a fantastic, very practical, detailed conversation that hopefully gave our audience some practical tips that they can put into use on in their own work. So thank you to you both. Thanks for the audience for joining us. And we will close it off here.
Thanks, all.
Thanks, y'all.